You can't white knuckle your way into happiness. Sobriety creates space, but you have to fill that space with something better than drinking ever gave you. Something that actually feels like a life you want to wake up to. And once you understand that, everything changes. Sobriety becomes less about holding on for dear life and more about building forward.
You've tried to quit before. Maybe it worked for a while. Maybe it didn't. But deep down, you know sobriety isn't just about not drinking. It's about finding peace, purpose, and finding yourself again. Welcome to the Sober and Happy Podcast. Each week, Tim shares hard-earned lessons from his own decade of recovery, real talk, real methods, and the mindset that helped him turn the fight of sobriety into a life he actually loves. This is the Sober and Happy Podcast. Now, here's your host, Tim Phillips.
Welcome back to the Sober and Happy Podcast. You know, there's this moment that hits a lot of people after they quit drinking. Not dramatic, more like they wake up one day, a few weeks or a few months in and think, all right, I'm sober. Now what? And this part doesn't get talked about enough. Most of the conversation around sobriety is about how to get sober. People focus on the strategy, dealing with triggers, managing cravings, keeping yourself busy, and a lot of early advice basically tells you to put your whole life on hold. Don't date for a year, don't make any big decisions, don't switch jobs, don't travel, don't go out, just stay safe and don't rock the boat. And while this advice can help some people, especially in early sobriety, it also leaves a lot of people stuck because nobody really explains how to actually start living again. Quit drinking, and suddenly the question becomes, okay, but what do I do with my life now? So you end up in this strange spot. You might still have hard days, and you might still be cleaning up some of the pieces of the past, but the full-on crisis isn't hitting you the same way it did in the beginning. Things have settled just enough that you could see the bigger picture. And sometimes what you see is a life that feels kind of boring. Not bad, just boring. You're checking off the responsibility boxes, getting through the day, but the joy hasn't really shown up yet. And this is where the idea of one day at a time, which is great in early sobriety, can slowly turn into feeling like you're stuck in your own version of Groundhog Day if you're not careful. You're not drinking, which is huge, but you're also not building anything. You're just repeating the same day over and over, waiting for something to feel different. And that's what I want to talk about today, because getting sober is step one. Rebuilding joy is where everything really changes. You absolutely deserve to feel that way again. Losing your sense of joy after you quit drinking doesn't mean that you're failing at sobriety. It's actually really common. Alcohol becomes a shortcut to all the good feelings. So when you take it away, you're removing the quick path your brain relied on for years. You take away the easy button your brain got used to pressing. And at first, there's a gap. Things are gonna feel off. The old artificial boost is gone, and the real healthy sources of joy haven't kicked in yet. And most people spend their drinking years in survival mode. They're not building a life that supports happiness. They're just trying to get through the day. So when you get sober, you're left with a life that hasn't been updated in a long time. Old routines, old habits, old coping patterns, and the joy that used to cover up those gaps is gone. And don't forget that your brain also needs time to reset. That's just basic biology called neuroplasticity. I talk more about this in episode 14, Can I Ever Be a Normal Drinker Again? So if you want the nerdier breakdown of what alcohol does to your reward system, that episode explains it in a way that makes that phrase less confusing. The simple version is this. Alcohol trains your brain to expect fast rewards with almost no effort. Sobriety asks your brain to relearn slower, more natural forms of joy. And during that transition, things could feel boring or flat, not because anything is wrong with you, but because you're rebuilding something that took years to wear down. So if you're sober and not feeling that spark yet, that's normal. Joy comes back, but you have to start creating it instead of waiting for it to land on your lap. One of the biggest things people don't realize about sobriety is that just staying sober isn't the whole game. And this isn't about minimizing how hard it is to quit drinking, because getting sober is huge. It takes courage, effort, and a lot of uncomfortable growth. But here's the trap. A lot of people think once they stop drinking, Everything else in life is supposed to automatically fall into place. Like sobriety is the final destination. And when that doesn't happen, they start wondering if something is wrong with them. What actually happens is the opposite. Sobriety isn't the finish line, it's the starting line. And this is where a lot of chronic relapsing happens. Not because someone is weak or doesn't want sobriety bad enough, but because just staying sober doesn't give you much to live for. Life shrinks down to a routine. No excitement, no direction, no sense of purpose, just trying to avoid the old life without building a new one. Because when life gets too small, the old coping mechanisms start looking pretty tempting again. Not because of cravings, but because of boredom, loneliness, or feeling stuck. Most relapses don't happen because someone desperately wants to drink. It happens because someone's life hasn't grown enough to support staying sober. You can't white knuckle your way into happiness. Sobriety creates space, but you have to fill that space with something better than drinking ever gave you. Something that actually feels like a life you want to wake up to. And once you understand that, everything changes. Sobriety becomes less about holding on for dear life and more about building forward. You stop asking, how do I not drink today? And you start asking, what do I want my life to look like now that I'm sober? That shift from avoiding your old life to creating a new one is where real joy starts to show up. One of the easiest ways to start feeling joy again is to follow your curiosity. And I don't mean you need to go find some big passion or figure out your life purpose. That's way too much pressure. Talking about small things you're even slightly interested in. In early sobriety, you're basically learning who you are without alcohol. So instead of trying to find your thing, just pay attention to anything that catches your interest, even a little. It doesn't have to be deep or meaningful. It could be simple stuff like trying a new coffee shop, opening up a book for the first time in a long time, taking a short walk somewhere new, or picking up a small hobby just to see how it feels. And here's the thing, some of it you're not going to like. When I first got sober, I signed up for a meditation class. It wasn't bad, but it definitely wasn't my thing. So I tried something else. I started exploring writing, and that ended up clicking for me. Now I've gotten dozens of notebooks filled with random thoughts, ideas, and things I've worked through. If I hadn't tried a bunch of little things, I would have never found that thing. That's really the point here. You don't have to commit to anything. You're just giving yourself chances to see what feels good and what doesn't. And even when something doesn't turn into a long-term hobby, it could still be a win. That meditation class I took didn't turn me into someone who meditates every day, but it got me out of the house and around kind, supportive people. And honestly, that was already better than sitting at home scrolling on my phone to distract myself, so it still was a win. Following your curiosity is a simple way to wake your brain back up and remind yourself that there's more to life than just staying sober. And over time, those small things start adding up to a life that feels a lot more fun, a lot more interesting, and a lot more like you. One of the harder parts of getting sober is a social shift. A lot of people worry that they'll lose their social life, and for many, that worry ends up being true. When drinking is a big part of your identity, the people you hang out with are usually tied to it. So when you stop, the dynamic changes, and sometimes the whole friend group changes too. And that can feel really lonely. Because you miss alcohol, but because you miss the people and the sense of belonging. That loneliness is one of the main reasons people slip back into drinking, not from cravings, but from missing connection. But connection in sobriety doesn't have to look like it did before. It could grow in new ways. Sometimes it's just one or two people you already trust. Sometimes it's choosing to show up in small moments instead of isolating. Sometimes it's meeting new people through something low pressure instead of at a bar. When I lived in California, I had a group of friends who would get together around a fire pit every week in someone's backyard. We'd sit out there and do all the fun stuff, laugh, tell stories, joke around, tease each other, just enjoy being around each other. And then there was the deeper parts too. We were honest. We were vulnerable. We showed up for each other when life got heavy. That mix of fun and real connection made a huge difference in my life. That is the kind of thing I looked for but could never find on a bar stool. And that's really the point. You don't need to force a certain kind of social life. You just need a place, even a small one, where you feel supported and real. When you have that, joy is a lot easier to find, and sobriety feels a lot less like something you're doing alone. Now, another piece of this whole joy thing is letting yourself have fun again. And I know that sounds simple, but it's something a lot of people struggle with in sobriety. Life becomes all structure and responsibility, and fun starts to feel like something from your past. But having fun is part of being a person. You didn't get sober to be serious all the time. The tricky part is the alcohol convinced you that it was the source of your fun, and it wasn't. It just lowered your guard. The actual fun came from the people you were with, the things you were doing, and the moments you were in. So now, without alcohol, you're relearning how to enjoy yourself in a more honest way. And this doesn't require anything big. It's really about giving yourself permission to do small things you actually like. Maybe it's something you used to enjoy. Maybe it's something new you want to try. Maybe it's something simple like going out for a bite, watching a movie, or doing something that makes you laugh. The point is to give yourself little moments that feel good, not to distract yourself from life, but to make life lighter again. When you have even a few things during the week that you genuinely look forward to, sobriety feels a lot less like you're holding on tight and a lot more like you're living again. Fun isn't something you earn only after you've been sober long enough. It's part of the foundation, and making it a priority doesn't take away from your sobriety. It actually supports it and makes the whole process easier. One of the things I really want to reassure you about is that joy does come back in sobriety, and it feels different than what you're used to. Not loud or instant the way alcohol made everything feel. It's more steady and honest and growing over time. You'll start to notice it in small ways. Maybe you catch yourself laughing at something little and it feels amazing. Maybe you wake up and realize you actually slept well. Maybe you go through a day without the constant mental noise you used to have. Or maybe you start feeling a bit more confident, not because of anything big, but because you're showing up for yourself consistently. A lot of people describe it as getting themselves back, not some new, shiny, perfect version, just the real version of themselves that got buried under everything alcohol took from them. It shows up in simple moments, a good conversation, quiet morning, something you tried that ended up being more enjoyable than you expected. Just these little reminders that life could feel good again. Most people get sober for all kinds of reasons. Sometimes it's health. Sometimes it's relationships. Sometimes it's consequences. And sometimes it's just being tired of feeling the way that they feel. But underneath all of that, almost everyone reaches a point where they want their life to feel better than it did before. And the small things you're doing now are what start to make that happen. And that's one of the best parts of sobriety. Realizing you genuinely like the direction your life is going. For your challenge this week, I want you to do one small thing that adds even a little spark to your life. Nothing big, nothing dramatic, just something you're even slightly curious about. Maybe it's trying a new place for lunch. Maybe it's texting someone you've drifted from. Maybe it's picking up something you used to enjoy for 10 minutes. Whatever it is, make it small and make it doable. The whole point is to remind your brain that life could still have little moments you look forward to. Once those moments start to add up, they'll make everything in sobriety feel lighter. If you want to share what you chose, message me or tag me. I always love hearing what people try. All right, let's wrap this up. The biggest thing I want you to take from today is that rebuilding joy isn't about doing anything huge. It's about giving yourself a chance to enjoy life again in small, honest ways. Those little things you try, the people that you connect with, the moments that you let yourself look forward to, that's what brings the spark back. You're doing more than staying sober. You're creating a life that feels better than the one you left behind. And if you keep leaning into that, even a little bit at a time, it really does start to add up. Thank you for spending this time with me. I really appreciate you being here. And I hope something in this episode sticks with you this week. Until next time. Keep living, sober, and happy.
Thanks for listening to the Sober and Happy podcast with Tim Phillips. If today's episode connected with you, share it with someone who needs it. You can follow Tim on social at I Am Sober and Happy and visit soberandhappy.com for tools, motivation, and more episodes. Remember, quitting drinking is just the beginning. The real goal is learning to love yourself and love your life. This has been the Sober and Happy podcast. See you next time.